Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Thanks for tuning in. John Kelly Profile here, and welcome. Welcome to our continuing very sad series on who killed Libby German and Abby Williams. Today is part 15 of this very, very sad series. And I'm extremely honored today to be on with two of my colleagues who've really been mentors as well. Dr. Edward Mirsky, PsyD. That means he's a doctor of psychology. Okay. He is the purest of the pure when it comes to psychology. And I'm also joined by phone today. We had some technical difficulties by Frank Adamson, Commander in Chief of the Green River Task Force and Chief of Detectives in King County. Been involved with hundreds of homicides and is one of the reasons why, because we have to give credit to the whole Green River Task Force for all their great work. Those that are living and dead, they did a wonderful, wonderful job capturing Gary Ridgway, and Frank is one of the reasons Ridgway's DNA was saved. And 20 years later, they got a hit on it, and so Mr. Ridgway is in a cage as we speak today for the rest of his life. All right, so, at this point, let's move forward and let's talk about, who killed Libby and Abby. Dr. Edward Mirsky, how are you doing today?
Doing very well, thanks.
Good. Good. Frank Adamson, Chief Frank. I'm going to call you Chief. Chief, how are you doing today?
I'm doing well.
Doing well. That's what's important. We keep doing well. We've been discussing this case over and over, and I'm glad you guys are on board with this. And, the one thing I'm wondering, and a question a lot of the audience is asking, is do we believe we have a serial killer here? And Frank, I'd have to start with you on this. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, I think it's difficult to determine whether we have a serial killer. What I believe is we have a person that has killed at least two human beings, and I believe that his motivation is probably sexual.
Yeah, that's what I think too, probably. Right, go ahead.
The difficulty in determining whether we have a serial killer is that we don't have any related cases that we know of. That doesn't mean that there aren't related cases. It would be rare for a person just to start off killing two people like this particular perpetrator did, because it seems planned, and it seems like he knew what he was doing. So one could speculate that indeed he is a serial killer.
Yeah. And Dr. Eddie, I got to ask you, do you think we have a serial killer here?
Well, I would echo what Frank said, that at this point it'd be very difficult to certainly conclude that. It's certainly worth exploring more, but we just, as far as I know, we don't have any hard evidence indicating that. So is it possible? Yes. Is it probable? Maybe, but I would say we need a lot more evidence. Like you said, people don't usually just start with killing two people. He's probably, progressed, if you want to use that word. We could say regressed maybe to killing these two young girls. But I would say it's very difficult without far more forensic evidence. So that's where I would stand. So it's certainly possible, but we need more evidence.
So We don't know if we have a serial killer or not. We're hanging on the fence with that. A question I have for you guys is, do you think that we will have a serial killer, that this guy is going to give us another body? And I wanted to defer this question to you, Eddie, first, because one thing I learned from you a long time ago is that the best indicator of present or future behavior is past behavior. So I just want to say that, put that out there and put that up front. So, I mean, what is your thinking? Will we get another body? Is this guy going to become a serial killer if he's not one already?
Well, my first thought is like human behavior is extremely difficult to predict. But the best that we have is said past behavior. So, but past behavior is no guarantee that it correlates, with the future. But it wouldn't be a stretch to believe that he might have killed again. Maybe like he tried to hide the bodies. This case, he might be successfully hiding. We can go back to Green River. I mean, how many years sometimes the bodies were out there until they were found? He might have became a little more sophisticated, with hiding bodies. So it's possible that he's done more killings. It's possible he's dead. It's possible he's in jail. It's possible that he's moved on to other states. But yes, predicting human behavior is really, really a tough thing. When I work in a prison system, I always concluded my reports with that paragraph saying, predicting behavior is extraordinarily difficult. Even if you've had, a pretty extensive criminal history, there are times when they do stop. So,
Frank, what are your thoughts on that? I mean, we can't say right now he's a serial killer, but what's the probability, or what's your thinking on he will escalate, he will evolve, and he will become a serial killer and leave another body out there?
If we assume that he's a sexually motivated killer, it certainly is possible that he is killed elsewhere. But we simply don't know that, and so I can't say that he will continue to kill. People have killed before, and after they've killed their first person, they don't go beyond that. And so, in this circumstance, he's killed two people, but it's at one time, and it's possible that he simply stopped. We haven't heard anything else in 2 years in this area. He may certainly be elsewhere, but we don't know that. So that's why this is such a difficult question to answer.
And the other side of that, is that we have a outdoor murder scene. And I think that's something we're going to talk about coming right up. Frank, talking about an outdoor murder scene. I mean, I don't think there's anyone in the country that can talk about more outdoor murder scenes and different burial areas than you. I mean, after working on the Green River case and knowing that Gary Ridgway was a necrophiliac and tried to hide the body so he could come back, and actually it's pretty sickening, but make love to the dead. I mean, that's what you ran into, that's what you were given, and you handled it very well. What do you think about an outdoor crime scene, an outdoor murder scene? I mean, how hard is it to navigate? And don't forget, the girls were found within a 24-hour period, less than, I think, 24 hours, but it was the next day. Um, what are the pros and cons of it being outdoors, and what are the pros and cons of them being found right away? Because with Green River, some bodies it took a long time to find.
An outdoor crime scene, particularly in this particular case, shows quite a bit of sophistication. Now, the person may be outdoors for a number of reasons. He may be a hunter or a fisherman, and he simply may have been out there, and it may have been these two girls may have been victims of opportunity. On the other hand, it may be planned, and then if it was planned, that indeed shows that sophistication that I was talking about. The chances of collecting relevant evidence are much harder outside because the elements affect the crime scene. This particular person took the victims off the path, and I think he did that for a couple of reasons. I think one of the reasons was he didn't want someone coming upon him while he was doing whatever he was going to do to those two girls. Secondly, he took them off the path, maybe if he was planning to kill them, to buy time before they were discovered. So it is much more difficult to process an outdoor crime scene than it would be, for example, if this happened indoors.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's that whole entire crime scene is left up to the elements, and then of course you've got the possible contamination of any evidence by first responders. I mean, it's in a small town, you have horrible, horrific murders like this, and you have EMTs, first responders, coming in, and I mean, their nature, by nature, their humanity, and why they're in the jobs they're in, is to get in there as quick as they can to see if anybody's alive, if they can help these girls or whatever. And unfortunately, at that point in time, a crime scene can be trampled on or contaminated. What say you, Dr. Eddy, about an outdoor crime scene?
Well, I think Frank brought up a lot of good points. We know that outdoor crime scenes are just so much more difficult to process because of the elements. If it's raining, snowing, the animals get to any kind of, body like that and scatter things. So it could show that this perp was very aware of that and deliberately, waited and performed all the brutality that he did. Waited till it was outdoors, and if even a few days go by, it's far more difficult to process the crime scene. So. Again, but it could be just a crime of opportunity. Maybe if this guy's, had high sexual desire, fantasy at the time, and could have just as well happened inside. But maybe for reasons we don't know yet, it all happened outside. But thank God, I guess, in a way, they did respond within a day. So that probably helped to preserve some of the evidence.
Absolutely, absolutely. Great points, guys. A lot of other questions we're getting from a lot of people that are contacting us is, don't you think a family member would know? And if a family member does know, should they turn them in? Or why wouldn't they turn them in? So I got to start with you, Eddy, on this one. I mean, how does this, first of all, do you think a family member, another family member knows? And how do you think that would affect the family system? Or do you think they don't know? Or you tell me.
Well, I wouldn't be surprised if some family members have some suspicions about other family members. An uncle, a brother, father even. Um, but and if they have a suspicion, then the next question is, what do you do about it? Do you want to turn in a loved one? Do you want to? Um, that's a pretty difficult thing to do, because if you're wrong, obviously it could cause a little family friction if you're accusing a relative or somebody in your family of committing the most horrific crime that is possible, really, molesting and killing children. Um, I think just the other day I saw on Dr. Oz, they had the BTK killer's daughter. He was doing an interview with her, and she was saying he was, for the most part, a very good father, took her hunting, fishing. She loved him. He had a couple of outbursts, angry outbursts along the way, but she said that was like kind of in a normal range, and for 20 some years, that's not too bad, but she had no idea that he was BTK, the killer, and he had killed before they, got married, and obviously he continued, and but she said that she still loves her father, and still part of her can't believe that he did it, but um, so if my suggestion is, if anybody does believe that a relative might fit some of the pieces of the profile that we've established, some of through the crime scene, and that they do contact the authorities. Can't they can remain anonymous, but the police will most likely follow up, and there certainly are cases that have been solved by family members coming forth and revealing things. So,
What do you think about the stress of the family member or anybody else in the family system that would suspect that their loved one is a killer of two little girls? I mean, what kind of angst is that causing in the house?
well, if they had some good reasons to suspect, a loved one, then they probably have some severe anxiety, I would imagine. Would manifest itself by, maybe, not sleeping well, having nightmares, bad dreams, maybe gaining weight, losing weight. When people have anxiety, some people eat more, some people eat less. Um, it's a very difficult decision. So they don't want to be wrong. They may be waiting for more evidence to come in, or maybe the other suggestion would be talk to another family member and put their heads together, and before they may decide to go to the authorities. But but if they, in their heart and their mind, they really believe that a father, or said a brother, an uncle, somebody, stepfather, could fit the profile, I think they almost have a moral obligation, because even with many rape victims, as we know, as an analogy, a lot of them say, "Gee, I wish I had reported my rape. I wish I came in sooner, because I could have prevented, future crimes, possibly other murders, other rapes." So they have some problems by not reporting later on. If it's found that they've had suspicions, didn't report it, and their suspicions were found to be true. So each person has to make that decision, but I'd say err on the side of being a little more aggressive, I guess, if you want to use that word, and report it to authorities.
And you know, Eddie, what do you think about the drip down effect? And I'll tell you what I mean by that. I mean, if another member of the hierarchy in the family, say a wife believes her husband or whatever is involved, but the hierarchy of the family is having these suspicions, as you mentioned,
Mm-hmm.
and is feeling this anxiety and depression and everything else that goes along with it. Isn't there a drip down effect on their children that could be, picked up and in a way traumatizing the child? Like, why is mom acting like this? Why is she so nervous? Why is she depressed? What's the matter with dad? Why is he so angry? You know what I mean? I mean, isn't there a drip down effect onto the kids and the whole family system from just one person in the hierarchy going through this?
Sure, that can happen. Yeah, there's I guess the term might be collateral damage for some. Let's say, for example, the wife suspects it could be their husband, could be an ex-husband, could be a brother, could be, we know it's a male. That was the perp. That's a fact. So we know that. So have to be a male relative. But if they're harboring those feelings, certainly it would create, like I said before, anxiety, depression. And could that affect the whole family system? Absolutely. But the best way to resolve that would be, I said, they can talk to a detective, I'm sure there's a tip line, and, get that off their chest. At least they've done something if they truly believe that someone they know could possibly be the perp. You need, I guess they'd had to have been in the area, obviously, and, maybe they were, like I said, aggressive in the past, maybe even have a criminal history, maybe some, pedophilia in the past. So, we would suggest that they report it and let the authorities handle it. They're the experts in following up. So that would be my best suggestion.
So there it is, coming from the doctor. The best suggestion, his advice: talk to a detective and try and clear it one way or the other. Clear the air one way or the other. Find out if your loved one is the guy or is not the guy, is the killer or is not the killer. Frank, what do you have to add about the families and how it affects families? Because my God, I don't think anybody has seen as many families that have been destroyed by murder as you have.
In this case, I don't believe that a family member or someone close to the family did it at all. And the reason for that is
not their particular family, not their particular family. We're talking about any family out there who thinks that they're, sorry if I led you that way, any family out there who thinks that they're somebody in their family system, a loved one, committed this crime, not the families of the victims.
The reason, John, even given that, I don't think that it's someone's doing that. And the reason I don't believe that is because I believe that the police would have come up with this guy from someone else. I mean, we've got pictures of him. We know fairly well, what he looks like. And I'm sure he would have been turned in to the police. They apparently have DNA. If they have DNA, they could eliminate him. I just believe that this guy knows this area because he was a hunter or a fisherman. He's been there in the past, or he worked on a farm at some point in time. beyond the local area. And for that reason, I have some difficulty thinking that, someone is holding something back that actually knows something. I think the person that might be holding something back simply isn't aware of this case. And, a lot of people, for whatever reason, don't read the papers, don't listen to, all the information that's come out on there. They're simply ignorant of what's happening.
And that's a very good possibility. Eddie, you and I have probably seen as much denial in different types of behavior and nefarious behavior and as any two people have seen. Okay, you and I have probably seen so much denial over the years that we say, how could you not know this, or how could you not see this? How could you not understand this? But denial is so powerful. And we always kid around saying denial is not a river in Egypt. But Eddie, talk about the power of denial. Like that is, definitely in your orchard. You've seen it probably more so than anybody, and you can talk about it. Denial itself, is that like a body's defense mechanism or something?
Well, if you're speaking of, let's say, a loved one denying that they may think a relative is the perp, and they go into denial. It's a term that has, I guess, from a psychoanalytic perspective, psychodynamic perspective, it means it happens. It's a defense mechanism that is unconscious. So you're not even fully aware you're in denial. That's part of therapy, is bringing the unconscious conscious. Or you could say subconscious, non-conscious. So that's a big part of a lot of therapy. Now, in this case, and then a more conscious thing, it's actually denial. We call it like lying. You can lie to yourself and lie to others. So that would be, even if someone asks somebody, do you think you know who this perp is? And they may say, no, we don't know, but they may actually be thinking that they could know, might know. That would be example of lying. That would be denial. They would be, just consciously lying. But that's why we do these shows, and maybe if someone's listening that could have been in denial, we would hope that now that they could spark something in their consciousness that says, gee, maybe maybe I am in denial about something. And then the best thing is come forward and report it.
And I think that's the most important thing, to report it, not to us, report it to the police folks, please. If you have a tip, if you think there's somebody that, you believe is possibly responsible for these murders, please contact law enforcement. We'll put the number out at the end of the video, but please don't call us. We cannot go down there and put the cuffs on any particular person. That is up to law enforcement. They have to handle that. So that's where your tips need to go. Frank, I just have to throw this one out there to you. In the Green River case, and I don't know if I'm right or wrong, but Gary Ridgway's third wife, and I believe it was third, not second, third wife, had no clue at all that he was the Green River killer. Can we say that none of his wives knew that they were all in denial, or they just didn't have a clue, or they just didn't keep up on the news, or couldn't, couldn't even imagine him doing that?
What I'll say is that wives turned him in, some of them.
Okay.
The wife that you're talking about was way down the line.
Mm-hmm.
In other words, almost all the murders, not all of them, but most all the murders had occurred before they got together.
Okay.
But the earlier wife, the second wife, did call him in, and she didn't think he did it, but he was turned in a number of times by a number of people. And the thing that I believe and know from these high publicity cases is that almost everybody gets called in. I mean, they call in an awful lot of people. They often, I got called in as a suspect. I'm on TV. Other people got called in as suspects. It's quite common, and in Ridgway's case, he was turned in a number of times. So, and he was one of the high-profile suspects early on, for a lot of reasons. But we couldn't eliminate him, but we couldn't make him. We didn't have the evidence at that time to bring a case in court. And he was one of several people that were turned in that were at least viable suspects. Oftentimes it is true, John, that wives or don't know that their husbands are perpetrating those crimes. They look at them. I might say through a good light. They can't conceive that this particular person would do this particular thing. In Ridgway's case, his wife that told us a lot about him said that she didn't think that he could physically harm her. Mm-hmm. That he didn't have that she could handle herself with him. So people can be deluded for a lot of different reasons, and of course denial is one of those reasons.
And again, denial is, like Dr. Mirsky mentioned, the psyche's protector in a big way. I mean, it's like a built-in, protection system to protect somebody from really believing and accepting that something could be going so terribly bad and so terribly wrong and be so extremely terrifying that they just can't even think it or imagine it. To kind of wind up here, I just want to kind of summarize what we have with you guys so far, where we've come so far, without really any hands-on information from law enforcement, and I don't blame them. I don't blame them a bit, because it's their case, it's not our case, and it's up to them to release what they want to release and when they want to release it, or if they want to release it at all. They've got a lot of skin in the game here, because they are responsible for solving this case, not us. But generalizing what we have so far that we're really not sure of, or that we're pretty sure of, but only keeping it in a more or less generic, generalized direction. I mean, we're looking at a white male. We're looking at, Frank, what did you say he was? 5'8" to 5'10" or 5'6" to 5'10" or something?
Yeah, I would say 5'8" to 5'10".
Okay.
And, you know, a fairly solid build.
Okay.
And the other thing that is so apparent from when you watch him walk on that trestle, which is rather treacherous, he seems to do that. He seems to not fear that at all. It's like he's been on that before, and he knows how to walk across that long trestle. And so that tells me, or it indicates to me that, you know, he's been across that trestle a lot. He knows it well, and he does know the area well.
Yeah, I totally agree with you, and I think Eddie does too, right, Ed? That I mean, he seems very familiar with that area and extremely familiar with that bridge. I mean, that guy seemed to be able to walk across that bridge. He knew right where to go. Like he wasn't like he had to keep his eyes down, and maybe that was another reason he didn't want to be seen. But he seemed to know that bridge very well. Do you agree with that, Eddie?
Sure. Yeah, I would agree that he's has been mentioned. He's familiar with the area, familiar with that bridge. Um, so that gave him the upper hand, and perpetrating the crime, and so far getting away with it. But we're hoping to change that.
Oh yeah, he's gonna get caught, and it's gonna be our audience that's gonna catch him. They're doing great work on this. The audience is extremely engaged in in following through on this case. I've never seen an audience so focused on catching somebody. I've never come across that. Kudos to all you guys out there. You're doing a wonderful job. And then, Frank, we talked about him being a hunter and a fisherman. Um, I would also add in there maybe he had some other reason for being out on the land. I mean, he could be a hunter of mushrooms even too. He could look for mushrooms. Um, I mean, he could be there for various reasons, but we do believe he's a hunter and a fisherman. Is that correct?
It's correct that I believe he is, and I believe, um, I believe he's hiked trails, at least this trail, several times. So he might also be a person that likes to hike in the outdoors.
Mm-hmm. Okay, cool. Eddie, do you have anything to add to that? Any feedback on that?
Well, I would agree with Frank that likes the outdoors, feels very comfortable. I mean, there's many things people do outdoors. Fish, hunt, gather. So the evidence seems to indicate he's comfortable, very familiar with the area, and it's like his comfort zone in a way. So again, we're hoping that by saying these things, this could jar some memories, could jar some people's thoughts about. Like you said before, it's the public that's probably going to be a key to solving this. And sometimes, as we know, we've been doing this for many, many, many years, and you get one or two tips in, and that can break the case. It's happened many times. So law enforcement, I'm sure they're diligently doing their job, but it's the public oftentimes that eventually does, break it open and solve it. So.
Yeah, and all we need is, like you said, one solid tip, one good tip. Okay, maybe two, but one good tip can solve this whole case and clear this all up and get a monster off the street. The other thing I just have to bring out that really grabs me with this guy is, he knew exactly where he was going. The end of the bridge for most people was the end. There's no question about it. There's really nowhere to go there. We've gone over that, talking about that in some of a number of our brainstorming sessions. But he had no problem at all. This guy had no problem at all getting down and dirty. I mean, okay, down the hill, boom, down the hill. However the hill was, steep, slippery. Made the girls go down. He had no problem jumping right in there, and it's a bit of an incline there, and going down in there, getting down, taking them across the path, going down another hill, gets to the bottom of that hill, which was not an easy hill either to navigate. That was steep, so down, I mean, it goes, had no problem going into the creek, had no problem going into the creek, had no problem coming out of the creek. See, that's somebody that's not scared of getting down and dirty. Okay, this guy isn't worried about getting dirty. Then killing two little girls, and then has the stamina after going down those two hills and everything, marching the girls almost 3/4 of a mile away from where he first abducted them, navigating that terrain, killing them, and then he's got to get out of there. So now, since he's descended, he has to come up. He has to ascend. He has to come back up. And they think to the graveyard or wherever. That's something, we don't know it for sure. Again, we're just generalizing here. But that's a guy in shape. That takes some stamina. Okay, I would think that takes some stamina, and that's somebody that's kind of a rough guy. He's been around. He's not scared to get down and dirty. And what I'd like to talk about maybe next time is some possible professions this guy might have. But what do you guys think about this guy as being an outdoorsman who's not scared to get dirty? And we saw this in Green River, Frank, as well. What are your feelings on this, Frank?
Well, again, my feelings are that he is an outdoorsman. That he's been out in those woods before, and whether he walked in or drove in, the time of year, it's a colder time of year. He's dressed for that occasion. Everything about him suggests to me that he's the type of person that spends a lot of time outdoors.
And there it is. Eddie, what about you?
Well, I agree with Frank. All the evidence we have so far indicates he feels very comfortable in the outdoors. He's like I say, he's not afraid of it. If you were an older, more frail person, you couldn't do that. You wouldn't be doing it. So he's probably in pretty good shape. And he said felt very at ease, very comfortable there doing what he was doing, even though it was a horrific crime. But probably he didn't have much anxiety, we can say, or concern, because he was in his element. And most people don't even think of doing things like hiking, down difficult trails, crossing creeks, and but we don't know, was it the whole thing planned very specifically, or did he improvise along the way? That's an interesting question. Did he, every step of the way, was it pre-planned? Or did he, maybe there was some resistance, some screaming, yelling, we don't know for sure. But maybe he had to improvise, some other maneuvers along the way. But regardless, he felt comfortable. He knew what he was doing. It seemed like he felt comfortable in that environment, and we got away with it so far.
So far.
Yeah. So I guess he's got the upper hand in a way so far, but so we got to keep the tips coming in, and like I said, even anybody when we go through these sessions, certainly we do it because we want this guy caught, and the public is probably the one that's going to do it. So anybody out there that even mildly thinks that they could know somebody, please report it.
Please report it. I just want to give a shout out to two people. We've got a nice video that's on there, a new video, new enhancement of Bridge Guy's image crossing the bridge by Harvey Carroll and his DNA team, his digital DNA team. So we're going to have a link to that, or we're going to have that there. I'll leave it up to the producer. And the other thing I want to give a shout out to somebody who's pretty unique. It's called Hoosier the Bruiser. Hoosier the Bruiser. And I watch him from time to time, and he's entertaining. But also, too, he seems like a stand-up guy, and that's what I'm concerned about. He went out to the bridge. He went out to the bridge in Delphi. He doesn't live there, or wherever he came from. And he actually went across that bridge. Now, they have that bridge, I think, pretty much blocked off as good as they could do it. I don't know what they have up there, some kind of barrier, because they don't want people walking on that bridge. Well, he went over there and crossed that bridge and came back across it, said how horrible it was, and said that a person could fall through there very easily and get hurt. So, since we haven't been there and we haven't been on the bridge, I can say it looks pretty bad, but listening to a guy who I think is a stand-up guy and a good entertainer, Hoosier the Bruiser, I must say I truly believe that bridge, from what he reported, is extremely bad, extremely in disrepair, and please, folks, stay off that bridge. Please, it's not worth it. That bridge is mapped any which way possible online. Be extremely, extremely careful if you do go there. And the only other thing I can say is that it's just not worth it. It's just not worth it at this point in time. We don't want to have another victim out there from falling off that bridge. That's really, I think, should be torn down. Dr. Eddie, is there anything you have to say before we end?
I would say the main thing is for all the viewers to digest what we talk about, and keep talking even with friends, relatives about the case. I'm sure as we've mentioned in the past, the town is also traumatized. It's besides the obviously the families of the victims, but it has tentacles that spread throughout the whole town. So again, I would say even if you have mild suspicions, moderate suspicions, severe suspicions about somebody, I would say call it in. I believe they can be anonymous if they want to. They can certainly give their name. They can probably, most times you can remain anonymous and let the police follow up, because we've been doing this 30 some years, and any tips that come in could solve the case.
Absolutely. Frank, any parting words?
Well, the thing that I've been thinking about as we've been talking here today is, what could the police do? One of the things that I hope they've done is created or got hunting license files and fishing license files. And I was also thinking about, ex-military people, and especially those that maybe got
Yeah, I think that's probably more probable that if he's been in the military, he's gotten bad conduct discharge or dishonorable discharge. I totally agree with you. I mean, we've seen a couple, and we've I've interviewed one especially that did get an honorable discharge and did get medals, but it's very rare and far between. Okay, most of them can hack it and get thrown out like Dahmer. I mean, couldn't deal with it, got dishonorable discharge and got put out, and there's a number of others. I just can't bring them to mind right now. So anyway, with all this being said, let today be the day. Thank you so much for all your participation. You're the greatest audience anybody could have. We can't thank you enough for your subscriptions. We can't thank you enough for all the feedback you give us, all the input. All I can tell you is make it a great day and stay safe out there.